Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes' Godbreaker at online booksellers today. I got a chance to take a look at the trailer for Shazam: Fury of the Gods. And after watching the trailer for Fury of the Gods, I was deeply disappointed in what I saw on screen because, like Black Adam that came before it, Shazam: Fury of the Gods feels like a very mid movie with an extremely mediocre by-the-numbers story. Now, the problem I see with Shazam: Fury of the Gods is that it doesn't look like it has a clear focus of what it wants to be, the same way Black Adam didn't really have a focus of what type of movie it wanted to be, and what I saw in the trailer was not the fun comedy that the original Shazam movie was. No, what I see is a disjointed movie that doesn't know whether it wants to be an intense action sequel or whether it wants to be the lighthearted fun comedy, and the overall effort presented on screen looks like another disjointed attempt to try to copy Marvel Studios and MCU films like Thor, Love, and Thunder. And that's the real big problem with Shazam: Fury of the Gods. It basically feels like a cut and paste of other action movies, and it does not have its own unique personality, voice, or heart like the original Shazam had. Now, the original Shazam was a movie that I believe you could take the entire family to, and I really loved the message of the original Shazam about family coming together to overcome the odds, but that message is really muddled in this film, where we have these gods who are presented as the big threat, but their threat doesn't really feel menacing because the screenwriter didn't answer the critical question, why should we care? Now, in the original Shazam, we could care about Dr. Sivana because Dr. Sivana coveted the powers of Shazam, and because he wanted to use those powers for evil, we saw him as a clear threat. And that was one of the best things about the original Shazam movie, was it had a defined villain, it had a defined threat, and we saw a clear hero in Billy Batson, and we saw him looking to lead his family as they were looking to overcome the threat of Dr. Sivana after he learned how to navigate and master his powers. Unfortunately, for this sequel, I don't really see where anything is really going, and again, it just feels so uneven as related to what type of story they're trying to tell. Again, I really don't know whether they're trying to make a serious action sequel or if they're trying to make the same kind of comedy that they made back when they made the original Shazam. Now, I believe Warner Brothers made this film after the success of the original Shazam. Unfortunately, they didn't go out and hire a good screenwriter like they had for the original Shazam. And I believe what happened with Shazam's sequel was the same thing that happened with 1987's RoboCop, because in 1987, nobody was expecting RoboCop to be a hit, and Orion Pictures quickly ordered a sequel to RoboCop, and sadly they hired comic book writer Frank Miller to write this screenplay, even though he had no real screenwriting experience, and the end result was a RoboCop 2 that was just extremely disappointing because the film didn't have any of the heart or soul as the original script written by the two screenwriters who wrote the original RoboCop, and the film was basically a mid-film that started the decline of the promising RoboCop franchise. And the same thing happens here with Shazam. I'm looking at this trailer and seeing a film that basically stops all of the momentum that the first Shazam movie started. And this movie, again, suffers from the big problem of sequel-itis, because whenever a film does well, Hollywood, what they try to do in the sequel is they try to top what they did before, and they overcompensate in their efforts to try to top what they did before by adding more special effects and not really developing the characters and their story. This is something a seasoned writer has to watch out for, because I myself, when I was doing the sequel to The Temptation of John Haynes, I almost fell to this, because when I was doing The Man Who Rules the World, I originally wanted to try to top what I did with the original story for The Temptation of John Haynes, and I was originally going to have the John Haynes character taking on the Block and making it a sequel where it was going to be the CEO of Morris Phillips against the man who ran the Block in the South Bronx. And I started that story, but then realized where I was making a mistake. Then I put that story on the shelf. And while my mother was in the hospital for a while, then I finally came back to that story, and I wrote a sequel that is considered to be very good by many readers who picked up the real Man Who Rules the World. And sometimes you just have to sit on a story because you're not ready to write it. Unfortunately, many screenwriters, they want to rush a story out. They want to rush characters out. And what they do is damage to the overall brand by creating a story that just is inferior in terms of storytelling. And that's what I believe Shazam! Fury of the Gods is. I believe it's a story that is inferior compared to the original Shazam, which had a lot of depth and character development as related to all of the characters in the Batson family, and also had a lot of love and passion as related to the script of this family of adopted children coming together to form a family to overcome the threats of Dr. Siviana. And when I look at Shazam, I really saw a better story being told. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers did not want to support Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as related to his efforts to try to rebuild the DC Extended Universe, because I saw how you could have easily done a Shazam sequel and make it fit organically into the DC Extended Universe, because when I look at Shazam and then I look at Black Adam, I really see how they could have set up a showdown between Shazam, Black Adam, and Superman in those three movies if you had the right person doing the writing. If you had quality writers writing the screenplay, you could have set up the Shazam movie to be the fun comedy. You could have set up Black Adam to be establishing the dark threat of Black Adam, and then you have Black Adam at the end of the movie. He's learning more about the powers of the Wizard and who his new champion is. And then as he's learning about the new champion and learning more about him and him looking to take his place, then you have Superman coming in, because you already had Superman established with the first Shazam movie. So you had a great organic segue to Superman and Shazam versus Black Adam. Unfortunately, there was people at Warner Brothers who had no vision as creating a big picture. And the irony is that these same individuals say they want us to build a DC Extended Universe similar to the MCU. Unfortunately, they can't work with the material that's given to them, because many of these people don't have a vision for the characters that are in their universe, and because they don't have a vision for the characters in their universe, they go out here and make these very mid movies where, yes, in some ways they're true to the source material, but they don't have that heart or that soul to resonate with viewers. And whenever they do make a movie that resonates with viewers, it's usually done on a fluke. And that's what I believe happened with the original Shazam, which was a movie that was basically done. They didn't expect it to do well. It wound up doing exceptionally better than anticipated, and as it did better than anticipated, studio executives went out here and wanted to rush out a sequel with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Black Adam, but Dwayne Johnson wanted to go out here and try to craft something of quality, and he wanted to build something that would help a DC universe or flow organically. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers, they don't know what direction they want to go in, and this is why they wind up making mid-movies like Black Adam and another mid-movie like Shazam: Fury of the Gods, where we get these gods who don't really look like anything special. Everything looks like an off-the-shelf bad guy, looks like a by-the-numbers sequel, and that's the big problem with the entire genre of superhero movies. The entire genre of superhero movies is feeling more and more like the movies are coming off an assembly line at the GM plant, and they're feeling more and more like Chevy Citations, which were one of the worst cars of the 80s. Yes, these cars were considered to be A to B transportation, but they really did not do anything special, and it really pales in comparison when many of us comic, sci-fi, and fantasy fans have been getting the equivalent of a Buick GNX from the beginning, especially at Marvel Studios. But these days, we're getting boring, uninspired movies like Shazam: Fury of the Gods, and that makes many comic fans like myself extremely furious, because we know how great these characters are, and because we know how great these characters are, it just is infuriating to see the Warner Brothers go out here and just make a very bland and uninspired sequel that really doesn't make you care about this movie, does not connect with you as related to the characters, does not really give you a reason to go out here. Because when I look at the trailer for Shazam: Fury of the Gods, I don't see a movie I want to spend $14 to go out and see. No, I see a movie that I have no problem waiting to come to HBO Max, where I can go out here and after I watch the movie, I can go out here and watch other Warner Brothers content and get more for my money that way. That is the problem with Shazam: Fury of the Gods trailer. It doesn't go out here and make you say, man, I gotta go see that movie, the way Captain America Civil War, when I was sitting in the library a couple of years ago, when I saw the trailer for Captain America Civil War, I was like, wow, this movie is just absolutely looking fantastic. I gotta go see this. I gotta get the money to go see this movie. I'm not getting that excitement as related to Shazam: Fury of the Gods, and I believe one of the reasons why I can't get excited for these movies is because the screenwriters don't really go out here and put together a compelling story. They're not given the time and the space to do so by Warner Brothers executives who are desperate for a hit, and I can really see their desperation on screen by all of the special effects they basically crammed in this movie and are just there for the sake of being there, but don't really move me to say, wow, that's awesome. No, it just makes me go, meh, it's just another movie filled with a lot of special effects, but no reason for me to care about anything. I mean, when I look at Shazam: Fury of the Gods, I'm furious because I want to see more imagination, more creativity, more things that are exciting about these superheroes, and I'm not seeing anything special, and it really just shows me how many at the studios are just getting burnt out as related to superhero movies, and I believe that they're burnt out because you can only write these kinds of stories but so many times before you start to burn out. And that was also something I, as a writer, have experienced, and that's why I'm always shifting gears to different kinds of stories, because I know how you can just wind up burning out on these kind of stories. So that's why sometimes when I would do an ISIS story or an E-Steam story, I would go out here and shift the gears and do a YA story like a story like the Thetas, or I would go out here and do a vampire story like Eternal Night, or I would do some goth stories like the Spinsterella trilogy. I would always switch up because that allows me to stay passionate about the characters I write it allows me to stay passionate about the stories that I write, and it allows me to stay passionate about the material that I'm working on, because I understand what it is when you're in a creative rut. And it looks like to me that Warner Brothers Discovery is in a creative rut. We don't see that spark with these movies. All I see is another desperate effort to try to copy the MCU, a brand that in and of itself is running out of gas. And when I look at this movie, it just shows me how much superhero fatigue is affecting the movie studios, because they're not really thinking about the products that they're putting out, because Fury of the Gods feels like another, again, inferior sequel in a year that's really reminding me a lot of 1990 at the box office, because I remember going out in 1990 to see RoboCop 2 and Total Recall, which were considered to be potential blockbusters for that year. And many people, they were just so burnt out on action movies at that time that they wound up being Pretty Woman and Ghost wound up becoming the biggest box office hits of the year. And this is where I see the superhero movie right now. 2023, with all of its sequels and remakes, is looking a lot like 1990, and the audience is looking for something new and special. And that's what I believe the audience wants, because when I look at this Shazam Fury of the Gods, I don't see anything that stimulates my emotions. And when you have a title like Fury of the Gods, I need to see big, intense action that answers the critical question every screenwriter like myself has to answer. And that question is, why should we care? And I don't see enough reason to care to see Shazam Fury of the Gods. Now, if you want to see me make more videos about superheroes, science fiction, comic books, and fantasy, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App. And if I want to talk about that subject, I will make that video for you. And if you want to pick up some of my action-packed fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books in the Spinsterella trilogy, and books like Eternal Night and the Thetas, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find those books at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller.